Just to be completely clear here, this video only focuses on things that occurred during the events of the Dragon Ball Z series. So nothing in this video will relate to either Dragon Ball GT, or Dragon Ball Super. As for the movies, I know there have been some new ones over the years, so I decided that anything that came after the release of the Dragon Ball Super manga should be excluded from this list. So even though the Dragon Ball movie Resurrection of F was released only 4 days after Dragon Ball Super's first manga volume, we're not going to be mentioning it. In episode 169, Goku and Gohan finally returned home after having spent 1 year training within the hyperbolic time chamber. Because of their rigorous training, Gohan was now not only able to transform into a Super Saiyan, but he, along with his father, were now able to remain in their heightened state for an extended period of time, something that surprised majority of the other characters to say the very least. However, the best reaction of them all, aside from maybe Vegeta, would probably have to go to Chi-Chi, though her dislike for Gohan's Super Saiyan state goes much deeper than you might actually think. You see, over in Japan, it's actually a sort of taboo for a Japanese child to dye their hair blonde, as doing so is a common representation of rebellion towards their household and parents. This can be noted in both the anime and manga. However, in the English version of Dragon Ball Z, Chi-Chi simply describes Gohan's appearance like that of a punk rocker, while in the Japanese version she actually refers to him as a delinquent. She says the exact same thing again in episode 206 when Goten first transforms during a sparring match against her, whereas in the English version, however, she instead calls him a monster. Since we're already talking about her, those who have watched through the entire Dragon Ball Z series may remember Chi-Chi was never really fond of the idea of Gohan becoming a fighter like his father, and instead would often try and focus his attention towards going to school with the hope of living a more normal lifestyle. However, something I never really paid much attention to, especially my first time watching through the series, was the irony behind some of the things she said. An example of this can be seen in episode 4 after Chi-Chi notices how well Gohan scored on one of his previous math tests. She mentions moving him into the higher science classes in hopes that he would one day become an astronaut and be able to visit other planets. Just a few episodes later, however, Gohan ignores his studies and instead travels to Namek. This kind of thing can also be seen again in episode 38 when Chi-Chi scolds Gohan and sarcastically mentions that he wants to become some sort of superhero, which coincidentally he does end up becoming much later in the series. I feel like whenever I make one of these things you miss videos, everyone who's unaware of the series are expecting me to find some sort of secret hidden subliminal message. Unfortunately, so far that's never been the case. Until today. There is in fact a secret message hidden within the original ending theme song titled Detekyo Tobakiri Zenkai Power, performed by Mana, which by the way is the song played at the very end of the first 194 episodes. The gibberish noise you just heard is actually a list of names of all the people who worked on the song's production and was included as a form of recognition for their efforts. If you want to hear the original message, however, you first need to play the track in reverse and modify the pitch. Probably one of the more interesting ones on this list in my opinion, but it definitely leaves me wondering what other kind of messages could be left hidden within Dragon Ball Z. Wait a minute. Really though, if anyone thinks they know of another one, be sure to let us know in the comment below. There are actually a number of references to other TV shows and movies that can be found scattered throughout the Dragon Ball Z anime. For example, in episode 39, the outfit which is worn by Bulma during her travel to Namek is meant to reference the outfit worn by Ellen Ridley at the very end of the first Alien movie. In episode 146, there is a scene where Cell places his hand on Krillin's head, which is sticking out of a plane. Instead of killing him, however, he simply chooses to leave. This scene is actually meant to reference a certain episode of The Twilight Zone. The entire Android saga shares many similarities to the Terminator movies. And lastly, one of the ships in episode 16 has the identification number NCC-1701-A, which is meant to be a reference to the Enterprise ship from Star Trek. I'm sure there are some other ones out there, but unfortunately these are the only ones I was able to dig up. Out of all of Goku's friends within the series, Vegeta is the only one who never really refers to him by his Earth-given name. This is because, as we know, he much rather preferred to call him by his Saiyan name,
Kakarot! Kakarot! Hey, Kakarot! Kakarot! Do you hear me, Kakarot? Kakarot!
While this is usually the case, there have been a few instances in the series where he's actually referred to him using his Earth-given name. One example of this can be seen in episode 72, right after Captain Ginyu confronts both Gohan and Krillin after having taken over Goku's body. And I don't know why, but for some reason hearing it come out of his mouth makes me feel slightly uncomfortable.
Yeah, this is starting to become a little too complicated. Even with Captain Ginyu inside of Goku's body, it doesn't take away from Goku's original strength. This is not...
In episode 210, hidden among the crowd of fans awaiting the start of the martial arts tournament, there is a person whose appearance is much different from that of anyone else in the stands. This robotic-looking creature known as Toribot is actually something created by Akira Toriyama as a comedic way of including himself within some of his works. This episode is not the only instance in which he appears, however. Based on what I could find in just Dragon Ball Z, he can also be spotted appearing in both episodes 199 and 215. As well as the movies Yo-Son Goku and His Friends Return and Broly the Second Coming. In the manga chapter The Fusion Succeeds, Toribot can be seen in one of the panels alongside the Z-Fighters on top of Kami's lookout, where he apologizes for reusing the same image of Trunks and Goten's fusion over and over. Each character's name, particularly their original Japanese one, is a pun on regular words, usually relating to food more often than not. For starters, the names of all full-blooded Saiyans are puns on various vegetables. The word Saiyan is actually made by rearranging the syllables of the Japanese word yasai, which of course means, you guessed it, vegetable. Vegeta, the prince of all Saiyans, is of course taken from the first 6 letters of the word, while his brother Tarbal, who was introduced in one of the Dragon Ball Z OVAs, is derived from the last 5 letters. Goku's Saiyan name Kakarot is based off of carrot, Raditz is taken from radish, Broly from broccoli, etc, etc. But the puns don't end there, oh no. The Tuffles, which was a race made extinct by the Saiyans after having taken over their planet, is a pun on the Japanese word for fruit, and is meant to symbolize their opposition to the Saiyan race. All of Frieza's henchmen are also named after various fruits. The entire Ginyu Force is named after dairy products. Frieza and his clan/race all have names relating to cold temperature. The Namekians are a mix of musical instruments and slugs. Bibbidi, Bobbidi, and Boo are all named after the magic word said by the fairy godmother in Cinderella. And Chi-Chi is, well, never mind. Oh, and apparently Mr. Popo was given his name because, according to Toriyama, it sounded comfortable to him. A point that people often like to use when criticizing the Dragon Ball Z anime is the fact that sometimes it can go a little overboard with the unnecessarily long and intense power-up scenes that can sometimes drag up for episodes at a time. Well, at least that's what it feels like. However, the real reason behind doing this was merely to prevent the anime from getting ahead of the manga. So essentially, it was just there to eat up screen time. The company behind the anime, Toei Animations, would occasionally make up their own side stories to either further explain things or simply extend the series. They would also occasionally extend fights, the most infamous being the battle between Goku and Frieza, where it is clearly stated that the planet is set to explode in just a short 5 minutes. As I'm sure we all know by now, that never actually ended up happening, and it wouldn't be until 5 episodes later that the battle would finally conclude. Cell, who is arguably one of the most loved villains in the Dragon Ball franchise, was actually a result of a long debate between Akira Toriyama and his former editor Kazuhiko Torishima. Originally, Toriyama had intended to make number 19 and number 20 the main villains of the Android arc. However, Torishima disliked this idea and pushed Toriyama to create androids 17 and 18. Whom he also ended up disliking. It wasn't until the creation of Cell's character that Torishima finally approved. Well, only after the creation of his perfect form, as he didn't like the first or the second. Another change that was made during the series development involves the iconic Super Saiyan transformation. Toriyama has stated that he ultimately decided to go with blonde hair because, according to him, having to draw in Goku's hair constantly was a big hassle for both him and his assistant. So, long story short, nearly half of all the epic transformations within the series was a result of Akira Toriyama's laziness, which in this case, I guess I'm okay with. In the OVA special titled Yo Son Goku and His Friends Return, we see a glimpse of what life is like a couple of years after the defeat of Majin Buu. Mr. Satan, who has yet again managed to convince the world he is the savior of the planet, has just opened up a brand new hotel and decides to throw a special party to thank everyone who participated in stopping Buu. Nearly everyone was present at the party, with even Launch having made a few brief appearances. However, despite them appearing in the manga adaptation, both Tien and Chaozu were oddly left out in the animated version. The reason behind their absence is due to the fact that Tien's Japanese voice actor Hirotaka Suzuki had unfortunately passed away of lung cancer a few years prior to creating the special. And as a sign of respect, they opted to leave his character out of the film rather than going out and looking for a replacement. In the series, when the two young half-Saiyans, Goten and Trunks, fused together, they formed to create the more powerful and overconfident Gotenks. If you stop and look at the way Gotenks is spelled, you can see it is simply a combination of both their names. That being said, you would think the fusion transformation of their fathers would follow the exact same naming pattern. Well, to be completely fair with you, it does, with Gogeta being the result of using the fusion dance. However, when combining using Potora Fusion, the resulting name we get is Vegeta. Now, I don't know about you, but I remember this bugging the absolute crap out of me when I was a kid. Just trying to figure out why they ended up picking this name, even though it doesn't really make much sense. And to be honest, I kind of forgot about it until I started making this video. Turns out the reason behind my 10-year-old mental torment was simply a result of, well, not being able to come up with a better translatable name. You see, the name Vegito is derived from the Japanese kana Vegeta and Kakarot, which in Japanese is pronounced as Vegito and Kakaroto, which made the most common romanization to the character's name in Japan, Vegito. However, because they decided to go with Kakarot instead of Kakaroto in the English manga, the name had now been unintentionally changed to Vegirot. And well, that is apparently what they ended up naming him in the manga. However, when it came to the anime's English dubbing, Funimation Entertainment decided to instead cut the R and reverse the last two letters in Kakarot. And they decided to just throw an I in there because why not, I guess. So to the 5% of you watching this video who chose to watch the series in Japanese, I apologize for the useless last entry. And there you have it, guys, 10 things you missed in Dragon Ball Z. Hopefully you guys learned something new. Believe me, there was a ton of information I had to dig through and move around while making this video, so it did actually take me a lot longer than I expected to get it done. Since there was so much, I decided to leave out things such as plot holes and animation errors. However, I still have a good amount of info left, so I might just make a second video just dedicated to mistakes. So yeah, let me know if you guys would be interested in seeing that. If you guys made it to the end of this video, you can let me know by commenting the word vegetable down below. And if you would like to see me cover another anime series, be sure to leave me your suggestions as well. But with that being said, guys, I will thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.